The red-eye from Seattle to Boston was supposed to be routine. Captain Sarah Chen had flown this route 247 times in her 14-year career with Atlantic Airways. She could navigate it in her sleep, and sometimes, on nights like this, it felt like she was. "Coffee's getting cold, Captain," First Officer Marcus Webb said, nodding toward the cup wedged in her console. At 28, Marcus was eager, competent, and still believed flying was glamorous. Sarah remembered feeling that way once before the job became a rhythm of checklists and autopilot monotony. "I'll microwave it when we land," Sarah replied, her eyes scanning the instruments out of habit. Everything was green. Altitude, 37,000 feet. Airspeed, 490 knots. Course, 94 degrees. The Boeing 777 hummed beneath them like a sleeping giant, carrying 183 souls through the October darkness. Outside the cockpit windows, storm clouds gathered on the horizon, massive anvil-shaped thunderheads illuminated by distant lightning. Montana weather was notorious for sudden shifts, but they were flying well above the worst of it, or so Sarah thought. Atlantic 227, Seattle Center. "We're showing weather development along your route. Advise when ready to copy amended clearance." The air traffic controller's voice crackled through her headset. Sarah keyed the mic. "Seattle Center, Atlantic 227, ready to copy." Behind them in the cabin, most passengers slept. A businessman in 12C typed on his laptop. A mother in 23A cradled her infant daughter. A college student in 34F scrolled through her phone, earbuds in, oblivious. None of them knew they had 12 minutes to live. Marcus adjusted their course slightly, steering between two massive storm cells. The aircraft rocked gently in light turbulence. "Seatbelt sign?" he asked. "Not yet, let's see if we can." The world exploded in white. Sarah's vision went blank as lightning struck the aircraft with the force of a bomb. The sound was deafening, a crack that seemed to split reality itself. Every screen in the cockpit went black simultaneously. Warning alarms shrieked. The control yoke jerked violently in her hands. "Electrical failure," Marcus shouted, his hands flying across the dead instrument panel. "I've got nothing, no displays, no." Boom! A second strike. Sparks erupted from the overhead panel, showering them in orange light. The smell of burning plastic and ozone filled the cockpit. Sarah heard screaming from the cabin, passengers thrown against their seatbelts as the aircraft shuddered. Marcus's body went rigid. His headset had caught the electrical surge. Smoke curled from the earpiece as he slumped forward against his harness, unconscious or worse. "MARCUS, MARCUS," Sarah screamed, shaking his shoulder. His head lolled to the side, eyes closed. She pressed 2 fingers to his neck pulse, thank God, but he was out cold. The fire alarm began its insistent electronic scream. Red lights flashed across the dead instrument panel, a cruel irony considering nothing else worked. Sarah's training roared to life in her mind. Fire, avionics bay, circuit breaker panel. She twisted in her seat, looking back. Smoke was seeping through the seams of the avionics bay door behind the cockpit. Thick, chemical smoke that meant wiring was burning. Her stomach dropped. The avionics bay sat directly below the center fuel tank. "No, no, no, no," Sarah whispered, her hands trembling as she grabbed the fire extinguisher. Every protocol said to declare an emergency, divert to the nearest airport, follow the checklist. But there was no radio, no transponder, no way to tell anyone they were dying. Through the windscreen, she caught a glimpse of the ground, jagged mountain peaks illuminated by moonlight, far too close. They were descending. Without the autopilot, without trim compensation, the aircraft was gradually pitching forward, gaining speed, losing altitude. The cabin door burst open. Lead flight attendant Jessica Martinez stumbled in, her face pale. "Captain, passengers are panicking. Smoke in the cabin. What do I tell them?" Sarah met her eyes. In that moment, Jessica saw something that terrified her more than the smoke or the screaming passengers: uncertainty in the captain's face. "Jessica, listen to me," Sarah said, her voice steady despite the chaos. "Go back there, tell them to brace. Life vests under seats. Brace position, do it now." "But we're over land." "Do it." Jessica fled. Sarah heard her voice over the PA system, somehow still working on battery backup. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is your lead flight attendant. We are experiencing an emergency. Assume brace position immediately. This is not a drill." Sarah's hands found the manual trim wheel. No electronics meant flying like it was 1950, by feel, by instinct, by prayer. She pulled back gently, feeling the nose respond. The control yoke was heavy, requiring muscle without hydraulic assistance. Her eyes scanned the darkness below. Mountains, forest, no airports, no roads, no options. Except there, a glint of silver through a gap in the clouds. Water. A lake, long and narrow, snaking through the valley. She'd flown over it 100 times and never paid attention. Now it was the only thing between her passengers and oblivion. Sarah's mind calculated frantically. The aircraft was a glider now, a 350-ton glider with the aerodynamic efficiency of a brick. She had one approach, one chance. Miss it, and they'd cartwheel into the mountains. She thought of her daughter, Emma, asleep in Boston, waiting for Mom to come home. She thought of the 183 people behind her, strangers whose lives rested in her shaking hands. She thought of Marcus, unconscious beside her, breathing but helpless. The smoke was getting thicker, the fire was spreading. She could feel heat through the cockpit floor. "Okay," Sarah whispered to herself, gripping the yoke tighter. "Okay, you can do this." Far above, at 40,000 feet, two F-22 Raptors screamed through the night sky, scrambled from Malmstrom Air Force Base. Their mission: find the ghost aircraft that had disappeared from radar. Intercept. Identify. If necessary, eliminate. Major Rick Donovan pushed his Raptor faster, his heart pounding. Somewhere below in that darkness, 183 people were flying blind. And their pilot had just made a decision that would change aviation history forever. The Wraith was born. Sarah Chen had exactly 9 minutes to save 183 lives. She knew this because the fire detection system, one of the few instruments still running on emergency battery, showed the temperature in the avionics bay climbing at 47 degrees per minute. At this rate, the flames would breach the firewall separating the electronics from the center fuel tank in 9 minutes. Maybe 10, if she was lucky. After that, Flight 227 would become a fireball. Her hands moved across the controls with mechanical precision, even as her mind raced through impossible calculations. The lake she'd spotted was 37 miles ahead, maybe less. At their current descent rate and airspeed, she could reach it in approximately 8 minutes. 1 minute margin, maybe. "Think, Sarah, think," she muttered, her voice barely audible over the shrieking alarms. The aircraft shuddered as they dropped through a pocket of turbulence. Without the autopilot's constant micro-adjustments, every gust of wind translated directly into motion. Sarah's arms burned from wrestling the heavy control yoke, keeping the nose level, preventing the aircraft from entering a death spiral. Beside her, Marcus groaned softly. His eyelids fluttered but didn't open. Blood trickled from his nose. The electrical shock had hit him hard. Sarah wanted to help him, wanted to check if he had internal injuries, but she couldn't let go of the controls. Not for a second. The cabin behind her was chaos. She could hear it through the reinforced door, children crying, adults praying, someone screaming repeatedly. Jessica's voice came through on the intercom, remarkably calm. "Seats upright, tray tables stowed, remove sharp objects from pockets, prepare for impact landing." Impact landing. The phrase sent ice through Sarah's veins. She'd trained for water landings in simulators. Every commercial pilot had. But those simulations assumed working engines for controlled descent, functioning flaps for reduced landing speed, and most critically, warm water that wouldn't shatter on impact like concrete. The lake below was frozen. She'd seen ice when the clouds parted. November in Montana meant temperatures well below freezing at night. That ice could be 6 inches thick, maybe more. Landing a 777 on ice was insane. It wasn't in any manual, any training program, any conceivable emergency procedure. The landing gear would punch through immediately. The fuselage would crack. The aircraft would flip, tumble, disintegrate. But what choice did she have? Sarah's eyes darted to the fuel gauges, still working, running on backup power. 42,000 pounds of jet fuel, enough to vaporize the aircraft and everyone in it when the fire reached it. She could try for an airport. Great Falls was 60 miles south, but 60 miles meant 12 more minutes of flight, and she only had 9 before the fire reached critical mass. They'd explode midair, raining debris across the Montana wilderness. She could aim for a road, a field, anything flat. But in this darkness with these mountains, she'd never see obstacles until too late. Trees, boulders, power lines, any one of them would tear the aircraft apart. The lake was her only option, and it was a terrible option. Sarah's flight instructor's voice echoed in her memory. In an emergency, you fly the aircraft first, navigate second, communicate third, always in that order. She'd flown the aircraft, barely keeping it stable. She'd navigated, finding the lake. But communication, that was impossible. Every radio was dead. The transponder that told air traffic control where they were, dead. The emergency locator beacon, dead. As far as the world knew, Flight 227 had simply vanished. Her throat tightened. Would anyone even know where to look? The lake was miles from their flight path. Search and rescue would focus on their last known position, not some random body of water in the wilderness. Even if she somehow pulled off a miracle landing, even if everyone survived the impact, they'd be stranded in sub-zero temperatures with night falling and no way to call for help. Sarah glanced at Marcus again. He needed medical attention. So would others after the impact. Broken bones, internal injuries, shock. And she'd be responsible for all of it. "Damn it," she shouted, slamming her fist against the dead instrument panel. The temperature gauge in the avionics bay ticked up another degree. 8 minutes now. Through the windscreen, she could see the lake more clearly. It stretched maybe 5 miles long, half a mile wide, tight but manageable if she could control the approach. Big if. The problem was speed. Without engine thrust to control descent, without flaps to increase drag and reduce landing speed, the 777 would hit that ice at nearly 200 miles per hour. The manufacturer's recommended landing speed was 140 mph, and that was on a proper runway with full systems operational. At 200 mph, even if the ice held, they'd slide for miles, into the shore, into trees, into rocks. Sarah's mind worked through the physics. She needed to bleed off speed somehow. A spiral descent, tight, controlled circles that would increase drag and slow them down without losing too much altitude too quickly. It would make passengers even more terrified. The G-forces would be significant. People would be thrown against their seatbelts, convinced they were in an uncontrolled dive. But it might save their lives. "Forgive me," Sarah whispered, thinking of the terrified people behind her. She banked the aircraft hard left, beginning the spiral. The world tilted. Through the cockpit window, the ground spun in dizzying circles. Mountains, lake, sky, mountains, lake, sky. The airframe groaned under the stress. Warning indicators flashed about excessive bank angle, but Sarah ignored them. The airspeed indicator crept downward, 480 knots, 460, 440. Jessica's voice came through, tight with fear. "Captain, passengers are screaming. What are you doing?" "Saving their lives," Sarah shouted back, Tell them to hold on. 5 minutes to fire, 3 minutes to the lake. Sarah's spiral tightened. Her arms screamed in pain, every muscle straining against the forces trying to tear the yoke from her grip. Sweat poured down her face despite the cold. Her vision narrowed to a tunnel: lake, airspeed, altitude, lake, airspeed, altitude. 430 knots, 410, 390. The lake rushed up to meet them. Sarah could see details now. The irregular surface of the ice, dark patches that might be thinner spots, the tree line on both shores impossibly close. 2 minutes. She rolled out of the spiral, wings level, pointing straight down the length of the lake like a runway. Her hands made micro-adjustments, feeling the aircraft respond sluggishly to her commands. 370 knots, still too fast, but it would have to do. 1 minute. Brace, 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 Jessica's voice echoed through the cabin. Sarah pulled back on the yoke with everything she had, flaring the nose up, trying to bleed off the last bit of speed. The lake's surface filled the entire windscreen. This was it, the moment between life and death, success and catastrophe, hero and failure. Sarah Chen, mother-daughter pilot, closed her eyes for just a fraction of a second. Then she whispered 5 words that would haunt her forever. Please God, let them live. Impact in 3, 2, 1. Major Rick Viper. Donovan felt the familiar surge of adrenaline as his F-22 Raptor sliced through the night sky at Mach 1.8. 12 minutes earlier, he'd been sound asleep in his quarters at Malmstrom Air Force Base. Now he was hunting a ghost. Viper, Hawk is on your 6, coming up to formation. Captain Alicia Torres called from the second Raptor, 2 miles behind him. Copy, Hawk. Let's find this bird. Viper's eyes scanned his instruments, then the darkness beyond his canopy. Somewhere below, a commercial airliner had disappeared from radar, just vanished mid-flight like it had been swallowed by the night. The radio crackled. Viper, this is Watcher Actual. Target last known position was 30 miles northeast of your current heading. No transponder, no radio contact, no visual confirmation. Seattle Center reports complete communication loss at 2:47 hours. Viper's jaw tightened. October 2019, and the specter of 9/11 still haunted every military pilot. An aircraft going dark over American soil meant one thing: potential hijacking. Watcher Actual, confirm. Are we authorized for intercept and identify? A pause, then, affirmative, Viper. You are weapons-free if the target poses imminent threat to population centers. Great Falls is 40 miles south of the search area. Use your judgment. Weapons-free. Viper's hand unconsciously moved closer to the weapons control panel. In his weapons bay sat 2 AIM-120 AMRAAM missiles and 2 AIM-9 Sidewinders. Enough firepower to vaporize a civilian airliner in seconds. Enough to kill 183 innocent people if he made the wrong call. Hawk, you copy that, he said quietly. Copy, Viper. Alicia's voice was tense. Let's hope we don't need it. They descended through 25,000 feet, their sophisticated radar systems sweeping the darkness. The Montana wilderness sprawled below, endless miles of mountains, forest, and darkness. Finding one aircraft out here was like finding a needle in a haystack. Except this needle weighed 350 tons and was carrying nearly 200 souls. Viper, I've got something. Hawk's voice shot through his helmet. Bearing 47, range 12 miles, descending through 18,000 feet. No IFF response, but it's big. Has to be her. Viper's radar locked on. There, a solid contact moving south, dropping fast. Too fast. Watcher Actual, we have visual acquisition on radar. Closing to identify. He pushed the throttles forward, and the Raptor leaped ahead like a predator sensing prey. Within 90 seconds, his infrared targeting pod picked up the heat signature. Even with engines apparently offline, the aircraft was still warm. Hawk visual confirmation. Boeing 777 Atlantic Airways livery. She's completely dark, no navigation lights, no landing lights, nothing. Viper maneuvered closer, his fighter jet dwarfed by the massive airliner. It looked dead, a corpse falling through the sky. No lights meant no electrical power. No electrical power meant no hydraulics, no flight controls, no instruments. No way anyone could be flying it. Yet the aircraft wasn't tumbling. It wasn't in a flat spin or an uncontrolled descent. It was gliding. Watcher actual. Target appears to be in controlled flight despite complete electrical failure. Requesting guidance. The radio crackled with multiple voices, commanders conferring, scrambling to make sense of the impossible. Finally, Viper, attempt radio contact on all emergency frequencies. If no response, maintain surveillance and prepare for contingencies. Contingencies. Military speak for be ready to shoot it down. Viper switched through every emergency frequency, his voice calm and professional. Unidentified Boeing 777, this is United States Air Force interceptor on your right wing. If you can hear this transmission, rock your wings. Repeat, rock your wings to acknowledge. Nothing. He tried again, and again. 5 attempts each met with silence. Hawk moved to port side. Let's bracket her, try visual signals. Alicia's Raptor appeared on the opposite side of the 777, both fighters packing the larger aircraft like wolves flanking an elk. Viper illuminated his external lights, flashing them in the universal signal for "follow me to landing." The 777 continued its descent, ignoring them. Watcher actual, no response to radio or visual signals. Target is descending through 15,000 feet, rate of descent increasing. Current trajectory will impact terrain in approximately 4 minutes. Copy Viper. Be advised, Great Falls Tower reports no Mayday received. Homeland Security is considering this a potential hostile situation until confirmed otherwise. Viper's stomach churned. Hostile situation. They wanted him to consider shooting down an airliner full of American civilians because it wasn't responding to radio calls. Watcher requesting permission to hold fire pending further assessment. I repeat, requesting hold on weapons release. Viper, if that aircraft deviates toward any populated area. Understood, sir, but something's not adding up here. Then Viper saw it. The 777 banked left, not dramatically but deliberately. A controlled turn, precise and intentional. Hawk, you seeing this? Confirmed Viper. That was a coordinated bank. Someone's flying that plane. The aircraft rolled into a tighter turn, beginning a spiral descent. Viper's mind raced. This wasn't the erratic flying of a panicked hijacker or the death dive of an uncontrolled aircraft. This was technique. This was skill. Watcher actual, target is executing controlled spiral descent. Flight characteristics indicate experienced pilot at the controls. This does not match hostile scenario. He followed the 777 through its spiral, watching in fascination as it carved perfect circles through the sky, bleeding altitude and airspeed simultaneously. Whoever was flying had no instruments, no autopilot, no radio, and was still maintaining textbook aerodynamics. Viper, look ahead at our 2 o'clock, Hawk said urgently. Is that? Viper followed her gaze. Through his night vision, he saw it. A long, narrow lake cutting through the valley below, its surface gleaming with ice. Oh my God, he breathed. She's going for the lake, she's trying to land on the lake. Watcher actual, target appears to be attempting emergency landing on frozen lake. Coordinates. He rattled off the GPS position. This is not a hostile. Repeat, not a hostile. This is an emergency landing attempt. The response was immediate. Viper, maintain observation. Emergency services are being dispatched to those coordinates. Do not engage unless absolutely necessary. The 777 rolled out of its spiral, now pointing straight down the lake's length like an arrow. Viper pulled alongside, close enough to see into the cockpit windows. One figure, only one, silhouetted against the faint glow of emergency lights. The pilot's head was visible, looking straight ahead, hands on the controls. Where was the co-pilot? Why was this person alone? Hawk, I count one pilot in the cockpit, just one. Confirmed, and Viper, I think it's a woman. The aircraft was dropping faster now, committed to the approach. Viper descended with it, his altimeter unwinding rapidly. 5,000 feet, 3,000, 1,500. The lake rushed up to meet them. Viper could see every detail now. The irregular ice surface, the jagged shoreline, the trees that would shred the aircraft if it slid even slightly off course. This is insane, Hawk whispered. She's coming in at least 50 knots too fast. The ice will never hold. She's going to die. Viper didn't respond. He was transfixed, watching the impossible unfold before his eyes. The 777's nose pitched up slightly, the pilot flaring for landing, trying to scrub off the last bit of speed. The massive aircraft hung in the air for a moment, suspended between flight and catastrophe. Then it touched down. The impact was tremendous. Even from his cockpit, Viper heard the crack of ice shattering, saw the spray of frozen shards erupting around the fuselage. The 777 bounced once, slammed down again, and began sliding across the lake's surface at nearly 200 miles per hour. She's going to overshoot. She's going to hit the trees, Hawk shouted. But the pilot was still working. Through his thermal imaging, Viper saw the landing gear deploy manually, impossibly adding drag. The aircraft slewed sideways, a controlled skid that burned off speed. The tail section broke through the ice first, water exploding upward. The fuselage groaned and twisted but held together. The aircraft spun 180 degrees, still sliding backward toward the shore. 50 feet from the tree line, it stopped. For a moment, everything was silent. Then emergency doors burst open, evacuation slides deploying. Tiny figures poured out onto the ice, passengers, running, crawling, helping each other away from the sinking aircraft. Viper counted silently, 20, 40, 60, 80. Watcher actual, all souls appear to be evacuating successfully. I repeat, the pilot got them down and they're getting out. He circled lower, his landing lights illuminating the scene. The 777 was breaking apart now, the tail section completely submerged, the nose tilting upward as water rushed into the fuselage. And then he saw her. A lone figure, smaller than the others, moving among the passengers, directing them away from the sinking aircraft. Then she turned and ran, not toward safety, but away from the group, toward the forest. Hawk, the pilot's leaving the scene. She's heading into the woods. Why would she? I don't know, but she just saved 183 lives with the most remarkable piece of flying I've ever witnessed. Viper watched the figure disappear into the tree line, a ghost vanishing into the darkness. Watcher actual, recommend immediate ground search and rescue to those coordinates. All passengers appear alive, but pilot has left on foot into wilderness, heading north. Unknown condition or intent. As dawn began to break over the Montana mountains, Viper climbed back to altitude, his mind replaying what he'd just witnessed. A ghost had fallen from the sky and performed a miracle. And now she'd vanished into the wilderness like smoke. Viper, what do we call this in our report? Hawk asked quietly. Viper looked back at the crash site one last time. Call her what she is, Hawk. Call her the Wraith. The last thing Sarah Chen saw before impact was her own reflection in the windscreen, eyes wide, jaw clenched, every muscle in her body coiled tight as a spring. Then the world shattered. The Boeing 777 hit the frozen lake with the force of a bomb. The sound was apocalyptic, a thunderous crack that seemed to split the earth itself. Ice exploded upward in massive shards, glittering in the moonlight like shattered diamonds. The aircraft bounced, the landing gear punching through the surface, then slammed down again with bone-jarring violence. Sarah's head whipped forward against her harness. Her vision went white with pain. The control yoke was ripped from her hands as the nose gear collapsed, plowing a furrow through the ice. Behind her, the cabin erupted in chaos. Overhead bins burst open, raining luggage onto screaming passengers. The oxygen masks that had deployed earlier swung wildly. A woman in 18B was thrown from her seat despite her seatbelt, crashing into the row ahead. The businessman's laptop became a projectile, smashing into a window. The aircraft slewed violently to the right. Sarah grabbed the yoke again, fighting to keep them straight, but the controls were useless now. They were skipping across the ice like a stone on water, completely at the mercy of physics and friction. 200 miles per hour, 180, 160. Through the cracked windscreen, Sarah saw the shoreline rushing toward them, a wall of pine trees that would shred the fuselage like paper. "No," she screamed, stomping on the rudder pedals, trying anything to change their trajectory. The tail section broke through the ice first. Sarah felt it, a sickening lurch as the rear of the aircraft dropped into freezing water. The nose pitched up. They were sinking stern first, still sliding forward but decelerating rapidly as water drag took over. The aircraft spun, a slow-motion pirouette of twisted metal and cracking ice. Sarah's world became a kaleidoscope, sky, trees, ice, water, all spinning together in nauseating circles. And then, impossibly, they stopped. The silence was deafening after the chaos. For 3 heartbeats, nobody moved. Sarah hung in her harness, gasping for air, her entire body trembling. Her vision swam. Blood ran down her forehead from a gash she didn't remember receiving. Then the reality hit her. They were alive. "Marcus," she turned to her co-pilot. He was conscious now, eyes wide with shock, bleeding from a cut on his cheek. "Marcus, can you move?" I think so," he stammered, fumbling with his harness. Behind them, the cabin door burst open. Jessica stood there, blood streaming from her nose, her uniform torn. "Captain, the tail is underwater. We're sinking." Sarah's training took over. She unbuckled, nearly falling as the cockpit floor tilted at a 15-degree angle. "Evacuate. Emergency Protocol Delta. Overwing exits first, then forward doors. Go." She pushed past Marcus, through the cockpit door into pandemonium. The cabin was a disaster, luggage everywhere, injured passengers moaning, a child wailing. Water was already seeping up through the floor at the rear of the aircraft, pooling around seats in rows 45 through 50. "Listen to me," Sarah's voice cut through the panic like a blade. Years of command authority resonated in every word. "We are evacuating now. Rows 1 through 20 forward exits. Rows 21 through 44 overwing exits. Move in order. Do not stop for luggage. Do not push. Help the person next to you." Jessica and the other flight attendants were already in motion, yanking emergency exit handles. The doors blew outward with explosive force, and inflatable slides deployed. Except they weren't slides, they were rafts, designed for water landing. But this wasn't water, this was ice. The first passenger, a young man in his 20s, hesitated at the door, looking at the 12-foot drop to the frozen surface. "Jump," Sarah screamed. "The plane is sinking, Go." He jumped, landed hard on the ice, scrambled to his feet and ran. Then it was a flood. Passengers pouring through exits, jumping, falling, crawling away from the dying aircraft. Sarah stood at the overwing exit, grabbing people's arms, helping them through, counting heads. 23, 24, 25, you. Help that woman, don't leave her. A businessman started to climb out alone, but Sarah grabbed his collar. "See that elderly woman in 22C? You get her out or you don't leave. Move." He did. 30 seconds in, the tail section was completely submerged. Water rushed through the cabin now, a torrent that was waist-deep at the back. Passengers were wading, swimming, fighting toward the exits. Sarah waded back into the water, searching. "Is anyone still back here?" Call out. A weak voice, "Help, I'm stuck." Row 38. A teenage girl, her leg trapped between seats that had shifted in the impact. The water was up to her chest, rising fast. Sarah dove into the water, her hands finding the seat mechanism. She pulled with strength she didn't know she had, adrenaline making her superhuman. The seat shifted. The girl pulled free. Geo now. Sarah pushed her toward the exit. Marcus appeared beside her, his face pale but determined. "Sarah, the fire." She smelled it then. Smoke mixing with the water. The fire in the avionics bay hadn't gone out. It was still burning, and now it was close to the fuel tanks. "Get everyone out, now." She turned to Jessica, who was helping an injured man through an exit. "How many left?" "I don't know, maybe 10, 15. The aircraft groaned, a sound like a dying beast. The nose lifted higher as more water flooded the tail. They were going down fast. Sarah ran through the tilted cabin, checking every row, every bathroom, every galley. "Sound off if you're still here." Row 12, a mother clutching her infant, frozen in panic. "Give me the baby," Sarah commanded. The woman complied, numb with shock. Sarah tucked the infant against her chest with one arm, grabbed the mother with the other. "We're leaving now, walk." She half carried, half dragged them to the forward exit, handed the baby down to waiting arms on the ice, then pushed the mother after. "Captain, we have to go," Marcus shouted. The smoke was thick now, flames visible through the cabin floor grates. "Final count," Sarah yelled to her crew. "All passengers accounted for," Jessica called back. "Just crew left." "Crew out, everyone out now." The flight attendants scrambled through exits. Marcus grabbed Sarah's arm. "Sarah, come on." But Sarah stood at the center of the aircraft, turning in a slow circle, her eyes scanning every seat one last time. Training said check 3 times. Make sure. Always make sure. Row 34. A phone on the floor, still playing music from forgotten earbuds. Row 27. A teddy bear abandoned on a seat. Row 15. Nothing. "No people, everyone out." "Sarah," Marcus screamed from the exit. "The fuel, we have to." Boom! An explosion rocked the aircraft. Not the fuel, not yet, but something in the avionics bay detonating. Flames shot through the cabin, igniting seats. The aircraft lurched, tilting further. Sarah ran. She dove through the overwing exit as fire chased her, landing hard on the ice. Pain exploded through her shoulder, but she rolled, scrambled to her feet and ran. "Get back, everyone get back from the plane," she screamed, waving her arms. The passengers and crew were scattered across the ice, 183 souls standing in the freezing darkness, watching their aircraft die. Sarah counted them with her eyes, groups of 10, 20 sweeping back and forth. There, all there, everyone. Behind her, the 777 was more than half submerged now, flames and smoke pouring from the fuselage. The ice groaned beneath them all, cracks spreading like spider webs. "Move to the shore. The ice is breaking. Run." They ran. Some limped. Some carried others. Sarah brought up the rear, making sure no one was left behind, even as her lungs burned from smoke inhalation and her vision blurred. They reached solid ground, muddy shore and pine trees, just as a massive section of ice gave way behind them. The 777 slipped beneath the surface, water rushing into the void. Steam hissed where fire met ice. And then it was gone, swallowed by the lake, leaving only debris and ripples. Sarah stood at the tree line, gasping, shaking, staring at where her aircraft had been. Around her, passengers wept, embraced, collapsed in exhaustion and relief and shock. Jessica appeared at her side, teeth chattering. "Captain, You did it. Everyone's alive, everyone." Sarah's legs gave out. She sat down hard in the mud, her whole body trembling. They were alive, all 183. She'd done it. But they weren't safe yet. Sub-zero temperatures, no shelter, injuries. The nearest town was miles away, and nobody knew where they were. Sarah forced herself to stand. Her eyes scanned the group. Hypothermia would kill them within hours. She needed help, real help. Through the trees to the north she glimpsed lights, distant but there, a building, a ranger station. She caught Marcus's eye. "Keep them together, keep them moving, keep them warm, I'm going for help." "Sarah, you can't, you're injured." "I'm the captain, this is my responsibility." She started walking toward the trees. "Captain Chen," Jessica called after her, "how will we find you?" Sarah didn't answer. She just walked into the darkness, leaving 183 survivors behind, vanishing like a ghost into the Montana wilderness. Above, 2 F-22 Raptors circled, watching the lone figure disappear into the forest. The legend of the Wraith had begun. The forest swallowed Sarah Chen whole. One moment she was at the shoreline, surrounded by 183 survivors. The next, she was alone among towering pines, their branches blocking what little moonlight remained. Her breath came in ragged gasps, forming clouds in the frigid air. Every step was agony. Her left shoulder screamed where she'd landed on the ice. Her head pounded from the gash on her forehead, blood now dried and crusted across her face. Her flight uniform was soaked from the cabin water, and the temperature was dropping fast. She estimated 15 degrees Fahrenheit, maybe lower. Hypothermia would kill her in under an hour if she didn't keep moving. 12 miles, Sarah muttered through chattering teeth, forcing one foot in front of the other. North, 12 miles. She'd seen the lights during their descent, a cluster of buildings that had to be a ranger station or fire lookout. She'd memorized the bearing, 357 degrees, almost due north. No GPS, no compass, just the North Star barely visible through the canopy and her pilot's instinct for navigation. 12 miles might as well have been 1,000. The forest floor was treacherous, roots that grabbed at her feet, hidden holes that nearly twisted her ankle, rocks slick with ice. Sarah stumbled, caught herself against a tree, kept moving. Behind her she heard voices from the crash site, faint and getting fainter. Part of her screamed to go back. "You're the captain. Your place is with your passengers." But a larger part knew the truth. Staying meant everyone dies. No one knew where they were. The aircraft had vanished from radar over the mountains, miles from their last known position. Search and rescue would focus on their flight path, not some random lake in the wilderness. She was their only hope. Sarah's foot broke through ice-crusted snow, plunging her leg knee-deep into freezing water, a hidden stream. She yanked her leg out, gasping as icy water filled her shoe. Now her feet were wet. Frostbite would follow within minutes. "Keep moving, don't stop, don't you dare stop." 40,000 feet above, Major Rick Donovan watched his thermal scope with growing concern. The lone heat signature, the pilot who just performed the impossible, was moving through the forest at a dangerously slow pace. He could see her stumbling, falling, getting back up. The thermal image showed her body temperature dropping. "Viper, she's going hypothermic," Captain Torres said quietly. "We need to get ground teams to her now." "Watcher actual, this is Viper. The pilot is on foot, heading north through heavy forest. Current pace indicates severe distress. She needs immediate extraction." He read off the GPS coordinates. "Copy, Viper. Nearest rescue team is 30 minutes out. Can you maintain visual?" "Affirmative, but Watcher, she might not have 30 minutes. Donovan had seen hypothermia victims before. The way this woman was moving, the stumbling gait, the slower pace, suggested she was in the second stage already. Soon would come the confusion, the exhaustion, the overwhelming urge to lie down and sleep. Sleep that would kill her. Why did she leave? Tors wondered aloud. Why didn't she stay with the survivors? Donovan understood. Because no one knows where they are, she's going for help, she's still trying to save them. He watched the thermal signature stop, lean against a tree, then force itself forward again. "Come on," he whispered. "Come on, Wraith, keep moving." Sarah's world had narrowed to a tunnel. She couldn't feel her feet anymore. Her hands were numb claws, but some primal part of her brain kept sending the same message: forward, forward, forward. She thought about Emma, her 7-year-old daughter. Emma would be asleep now in Boston, no idea that Mommy's plane had crashed, that Mommy was dying in a Montana forest. No, not dying, fighting. Sarah grabbed another tree, pulled herself forward. Her vision swam. The forest spun around her. How far had she come? 2 miles, 5. She'd lost all sense of time and distance. The lights she'd seen from the air, were they real or had she imagined them? Her foot caught on a root. She fell hard, face first, into the snow. The cold burned like fire against her skin. For a moment she just lay there. It would be so easy to rest, just for a minute, just close her eyes. No. Marcus's face flashed in her mind. Jessica, the mother with her infant, the teenage girl she'd pulled from the wreckage. All 183 of them, huddled in the freezing darkness, waiting for rescue that would never come unless she. Sarah pushed herself up. Her arms shook violently. She made it to her knees, then her feet. One step, then another, then another. "Viper, she's down," Tors called out. "She fell, and wait, she's getting back up. How is she still moving?" Donovan shook his head in amazement. "I don't know, Hawk, I honestly don't know." He'd seen combat pilots, special forces operators, Marines who'd endured hell. This woman, this commercial airline captain, was showing the kind of determination he'd only witnessed in the most elite warriors. "Watcher actual, update on rescue teams. 20 minutes out, Viper. We've scrambled a medevac helicopter from Great Falls, but the terrain is too rough for immediate landing. Ground teams are moving on foot from the access road." 20 minutes. The thermal signature was barely moving now. "She's not going to make it," Tors said quietly. But Donovan kept watching. The signature stopped, swayed, then moved forward again. Stopped. Moved. Each step an act of pure will against a body that was shutting down. "Yes, she will," he said. "She didn't save 183 people just to die in the woods. She's going to make it." Sarah didn't remember the last mile. Her mind was fragmenting, reality mixing with hallucination. She saw her daughter running through the trees, saw her father, dead 15 years, walking beside her, saw the aircraft, whole and perfect, flying overhead. Then she saw light, real light. A building emerged from the darkness, log walls, a green roof, a sign that read Kookanusa National Forest Ranger Station. "Help," Sarah tried to say, but her lips wouldn't form the word. She stumbled toward the door. Her legs gave out. She crawled the last 20 feet on hands and knees, leaving a trail of blood in the snow. Her fist hit the door once, twice. On the third hit she collapsed. The door opened. A man's face, bearded, shocked, looked down at her. "My God, ma'am, are you?" "Flight 227, Sarah whispered, her voice barely audible. "Lake Kookanusa, 12 miles south. 183 people, alive, need help, now." Her vision went black. Ranger Thomas Mackenzie caught the woman as she fell, easing her to the floor. Her skin was ice cold, lips blue, pupils dilated. Severe hypothermia. He grabbed his radio while wrapping her in emergency blankets. "This is Station 7 to dispatch. I have a crash survivor at my location. She's critical. Says there's a downed aircraft on Lake Kookanusa with 183 people." The radio exploded with voices. Within seconds, the Montana wilderness lit up with emergency vehicles, helicopters, and rescue teams converging on coordinates Sarah had provided with her last conscious words. Mackenzie held the unconscious woman, monitoring her pulse. She was young, mid-30s maybe, wearing a pilot's uniform. Her name tag read CHEN's Captain. "You made it," he told her quietly. "You crazy, brave woman, you made it." Above, Viper watched the thermal signatures at the ranger station. Two now, one horizontal, one kneeling beside her. "Watcher actual, the pilot has reached the ranger station. She's down, but rescue personnel are with her. Ground teams should redirect to the survivor group at the lake coordinates I sent earlier." "Outstanding work, Viper. You're cleared to RTB." But Donovan didn't turn for home yet. He made one more pass over the ranger station, watching the flurry of activity below. Ambulances arriving, helicopters landing, a rescue operation mobilizing with military precision. All because one woman refused to quit. "Hawk, you ever see anything like that?" "Never, Viper, and I hope she knows. She just became a legend." As the F-22s turned toward Malmstrom Air Force Base, the sun began to rise over Montana, painting the wilderness gold. Somewhere in that light, 183 survivors waited for rescue. And somewhere in a ranger station, the Wraith slept, her mission finally complete. Sarah Chen woke up screaming. Her hands clawed at invisible controls. Her body jerked against restraints that weren't there. The steady beep of the heart monitor became the shriek of fire alarms. The white hospital ceiling transformed into flames spreading across a cockpit. "Captain Chen, Sarah, you're safe. You're in the hospital." A nurse's face swam into focus. Kind eyes, steady hands pressing gently on Sarah's shoulders. Slowly, reality reassembled itself. Not the cockpit, a hospital room, St. Vincent Healthcare in Billings, Montana. Sarah collapsed back against the pillows, her chest heaving. Sweat soaked through her hospital gown despite the room's coolness. Her left hand was heavily bandaged, severe frostbite, she remembered dimly. 3 toes on her right foot had gone black. They might have to amputate. "How long?" Sarah's voice was a raspy whisper. 3 days, the nurse said gently. "You've been in and out. Hypothermia, pneumonia, smoke inhalation. You're lucky to be alive." Lucky? Sarah almost laughed. She felt like she'd been hit by a train. "The passengers," she said urgently, trying to sit up. "The crew, are they?" "All safe, every single one," the nurse smiled. "Thanks to you." The words should have brought relief. Instead, they brought tears. Sarah turned her face away, her body shaking with silent sobs. She'd held it together through the lightning strike, the fire, the crash, the 12-mile death march through freezing wilderness. Now, in the safety of a hospital bed, she fell apart. The nurse quietly left her alone. The world, meanwhile, had gone insane. Within hours of the rescue, the story had exploded across every news channel, every website, every social media platform on Earth. The footage from the F-22 Raptors, declassified at unprecedented speed, showed everything. The dark aircraft spiraling down, the perfect landing on ice, the lone figure walking into the wilderness. "Miracle on Lake Koocyan, USA," screamed the headlines. Pilot SAVES 183 in impossible crash landing. The Wraith, America's unknown hero. Outside Sarah's hospital room, the hallway was packed. Reporters camped out, cameras ready. News helicopters circled overhead despite hospital no-fly zone orders. Security guards formed a human barrier at the entrance. The president had called twice. Congress was drafting a resolution. Atlantic Airways stock had surged on news that their pilot had performed the greatest emergency landing in aviation history. But Sarah knew none of this yet. She stared at the ceiling, replaying every decision. Should she have tried for an airport? Should she have stayed with the passengers instead of going for help? Had she endangered lives with her choices? A soft knock interrupted her thoughts. Marcus Webb entered, his arm in a sling, a bandage across his cheek. Behind him came Jessica Martinez, walking with a slight limp, and 3 other flight attendants. "Captain," Marcus said quietly, we wanted to thank you." Sarah couldn't look at them. "I almost killed everyone. If I'd miscalculated the glide ratio, if the ice hadn't held, if—" "But you didn't." Jessica sat on the edge of the bed. "Sarah, you saved our lives, all of us. You flew a dead aircraft, landed it on a frozen lake in the dark, got everyone out, then walked 12 miles through a blizzard to save us. You're a hero." "I'm not a hero," Sarah whispered. "I'm just a pilot who got lucky." "No," Marcus's voice was firm. "I was there, I saw what you did. That wasn't luck. That was skill, courage, and sheer determination. You refused to give up on us." The flight attendants nodded, tears streaming down their faces. "The passengers want to see you," one of them said. "They're waiting outside, all of them." Sarah's eyes widened. All of them. Every single one who could travel, the ones still in the hospital, sent letters. Jessica pulled out a stack of envelopes from her bag. "Read these when you're ready." After the crew left, Sarah opened the first letter with trembling hands. "Dear Captain Chen, I'm the mother from seat 23A. You saved my baby's life. I don't have words for what that means. You're my daughter's guardian angel. Thank you doesn't even begin to cover it. Maria Rodriguez." Sarah opened another. "Captain, I'm the teenage girl you pulled from the wreckage in row 38. My leg was trapped and I was drowning. You came back for me when you could have left. You gave me my life back. I'm going to flight school because of you. Emma Thompson." Another. "Dear Captain Chen, I was in seat 12C, the businessman who didn't want to help the elderly woman. You made me. You showed me what leadership looks like. I'm ashamed of who I was that night, but grateful for who you taught me to be. David Park." Letter after letter. 183 stories of survival, gratitude, transformation. By the time Sarah finished reading, she was sobbing openly. On the 4th day, the hospital relented to public pressure and organized a press conference. Sarah sat in a wheelchair, pale and exhausted, facing a sea of cameras and reporters. "Captain Chen, how does it feel to be called a hero?" Sarah gripped the wheelchair armrests. "I'm not comfortable with that word. I did what any pilot would do in that situation. But the NTSB says no other pilot could have done what you did. They're calling it impossible." "Then they need to have more faith in pilots." A ghost of a smile crossed Sarah's face. "We train for emergencies. I just had more emergencies than usual that night." Laughter rippled through the room. "What went through your mind when the lightning struck?" Sarah's smile faded. Her hands started shaking. She gripped the armrests harder but couldn't stop the trembling. I thought we were going to die, all of us. I thought I was going to fail my passengers, my crew, her voice broke. My daughter." The room went silent. "But I couldn't accept that. I refused to accept that, so I kept flying, kept fighting, because that's what we do. We don't give up on the people counting on us." A reporter from the back called out, "The F-22 pilots nicknamed you Wraith. How do you feel about that?" Sarah looked directly at the camera. "I feel like it's a name that belongs to someone stronger than me, someone who doesn't wake up screaming, someone who doesn't see fire every time they close their eyes." The raw honesty silenced the room. "I'm not a wraith or a ghost. I'm just Sarah, a pilot who got scared, made hard choices, and somehow didn't get everyone killed. If that makes me a hero in your eyes, then I'll try to be worthy of it." She paused, her voice dropping to almost a whisper. "But right now, I just want to hold my daughter and forget that night ever happened." The footage of that press conference went viral. Not the dramatic rescue story, but the broken honesty of a woman who'd done the impossible and was paying the price for it. "I Stand With Sarah" began trending. Pilots worldwide posted messages of support. "She's one of us, she's all of us." But in her hospital room that night, Sarah lay awake, staring at the ceiling. The doctors said she could go home in 2 days. Home to Emma, home to Boston, home to a life that felt foreign now. She closed her eyes and saw flames, heard screaming, felt the yoke in her hands. The NTSB investigation was coming. 14 protocol violations. Her license was in jeopardy. Her career might be over. She'd saved 183 lives, and it might cost her everything. Outside her window, 2 F-22 Raptors flew past, Viper and Hawk performing a flyby salute. Sarah watched them disappear into the night sky and wondered if she'd ever fly again. The hero everyone celebrated was drowning in nightmares. And nobody knew how to save her from herself. 6 months after the crash, Sarah Chen sat in a sterile conference room in Washington, D.C., facing the people who held her career in their hands. The National Transportation Safety Board hearing room was packed. Regulators, FAA officials, airline executives, reporters, and in the back row, all 183 survivors, wearing matching blue ribbons. On the table before Sarah sat an 847-page report. She'd read every word, every technical analysis, every protocol she'd violated, every regulation she'd shattered. 14 violations, any one of them grounds for license revocation. Captain Chen, the lead investigator, a severe woman named Patricia Morrison, began. You had 14 opportunities to follow established safety procedures. Instead, you chose to improvise, to ignore protocols that exist for a reason. Sarah's lawyer touched her arm in warning, but Sarah leaned forward. With respect, Ms. Morrison, those protocols assume working systems. I had none. You had the protocol for complete electrical failure. It calls for attempting to restart auxiliary power, declaring emergency on emergency frequencies, and proceeding to the nearest suitable airport. I had no radios to declare emergency. My APU was destroyed by the lightning strike, and the nearest airport was 12 minutes away. The fire would have reached the fuel tanks in 9. Morrison's eyes narrowed. You made that calculation based on what? A guess, a feeling. Based on 15 years of experience, my engineering degree, and the temperature gauge that was still working on emergency battery. So you admit you were guessing. Sarah's hands clenched under the table. I was making informed decisions under extreme duress with incomplete information. Yes. Morrison pulled out another document. Protocol 14 Alpha, during electrical failure, maintain course and altitude while troubleshooting. You immediately deviated from course and entered a spiral descent. Why? Because maintaining course meant flying into a mountain in 3 minutes. Protocol 14 Bravo. Attempt emergency landing only at designated airports with crash and rescue facilities. I attempted to save lives. Sarah's voice cracked. You're treating this like a normal flight where normal rules apply. There was nothing normal about Flight 227. I had a dead aircraft, unconscious co-pilot, fire spreading toward fuel tanks, and 183 people who would die if I followed your precious protocols. The room erupted. Morrison banged her gavel. Order, Captain Chen, control yourself or you'll be held in contempt. Sarah's lawyer whispered urgently, Sarah, please, let me handle this. But Sarah was done being silent. 6 months of nightmares, therapy sessions, and second-guessing herself had reached a breaking point. You want to revoke my license? Fine, do it. But don't pretend it's about safety. It's about control. It's about punishing someone who dared to think outside your rulebook when the rulebook became irrelevant. Morrison's face flushed red. Captain Chen, you endangered. I saved them. The courtroom doors burst open. Major Rick Donovan strode in wearing full Air Force dress uniform, medals gleaming. Behind him, Captain Alicia Torres, equally decorated. The military precision of their entrance commanded instant silence. Mr. Chairman, Donovan's voice carried authority that made even Morrison pause. Permission to present testimony. The chairman, an older man who'd been silent until now, nodded slowly. The chair recognizes Major Donovan, United States Air Force. Donovan walked to the witness stand, Tors beside him. He held a tablet displaying thermal footage. Members of the board, I'm Major Rick Donovan. Call sign, Viper. On October 23, 2019, Captain Tors and I were scrambled to intercept Flight 227. We witnessed everything. He played the footage. The darkened aircraft spiraling down, the perfect landing, the evacuation, Sarah's lone trek into wilderness. I've flown combat missions over Iraq and Afghanistan. I've seen the best pilots in the world under pressure. What Captain Chen did that night, he paused, his voice thick with emotion. That was the finest display of airmanship I've ever witnessed. Morrison interrupted. Major, with respect, military flying and civilian protocols are different, yes, but survival isn't. Tors stepped forward. Ma'am, I watched Captain Chen fly a 350-ton aircraft with no instruments, no hydraulics, no electrical systems. She executed a spiral descent that would challenge an experienced test pilot in a simulator. She landed on ice, landed, not crashed, with such precision that the fuselage remained intact enough to evacuate all passengers. Then she walked 12 miles through sub-zero temperatures while suffering from smoke inhalation and hypothermia, Donovan continued. Not to save herself, to save them. We watched her fall 7 times. 7 times she got back up. He turned to face Morrison directly. You want to punish that? You want to tell every pilot in America that if they face an impossible situation and choose survival over protocol, they'll lose their license. What message does that send? The room was dead silent. Morrison shuffled her papers. The regulations exist because most situations are routine, a voice from the back. The businessman from seat 12C stood up. I was on that flight. I watched Captain Chen make decisions in seconds that you're analyzing for 6 months. She didn't have your reports, your data, your hindsight. She had fire, smoke, and terror, and she still saved us all. Another survivor stood, then another. Within seconds, all 183 were on their feet. She's a hero, someone shouted. Don't take her wings, another cried. The mother from 23A stepped forward, her infant daughter, now 6 months older, in her arms. You revoke her license. You tell my daughter that the woman who saved her life was wrong to do it. Can you live with that? Morrison looked rattled. The chairman called for order, but the survivors wouldn't sit. The teenage girl Sarah had pulled from the wreckage spoke next, her voice clear. Captain Chen came back for me. The plane was sinking and she came back. That's not recklessness. That's courage. Morrison stood abruptly. This hearing is adjourned for deliberation. We'll reconvene in 1 hour. Sarah sat alone in an empty hallway, her head in her hands. The adrenaline was fading, replaced by exhaustion and fear. Donovan and Tors found her there. That took guts, Donovan said quietly, sitting beside her. I probably just lost my career, Sarah whispered. Maybe, but you told the truth. Tors sat on her other side. Sarah, can I tell you something? When we first spotted your aircraft, Command wanted us ready to shoot you down. They thought it was a hijacking. Sarah's head snapped up. What? Your aircraft was dark, non-responsive, flying erratically. It fit the profile. We had weapons authorization. Donovan's voice was heavy. I had my finger near the trigger. 200 lives because of 9/11 paranoia. But you didn't. Because I watched you fly. I saw the controlled descent, the precision. I told Command, someone's flying that plane and they're trying to save it. That judgment call saved 183 lives before you even landed. Tors nodded. Sometimes the right decision means breaking rules. You taught us that. Sarah felt tears burning her eyes. I wake up every night seeing fire, hearing screams. I can't eat, can't sleep. My daughter asks why mommy cries so much, and now they might take the only thing I know how to do. Then fight, Donovan said firmly. Fight for every pilot who will face an impossible choice. Fight because those 183 people need you to. Fight because you're the Wraith, and Wraiths don't quit. 1 hour later, the board reconvened. Sarah stood, her legs shaking, as the chairman read the decision. After reviewing all testimony and evidence, this board finds that Captain Sarah Chen, while in violation of 14 specific protocols, acted with reasonable judgment under extreme circumstances. Her decisions, though unorthodox, resulted in 0 fatalities in a situation where loss of all souls aboard was otherwise inevitable. Sarah's heart stopped. Therefore, this board rules: Captain Chen's license is hereby reinstated with full privileges. Furthermore, we commend her extraordinary airmanship and recommend her actions be studied as a case example of emergency decision-making under catastrophic system failure. The room exploded in cheers. Sarah collapsed into her chair, sobbing. Marcus hugged her. Jessica grabbed her hand. The survivors rushed forward, surrounding her with embraces and tears. Donovan and Tor stood at attention, saluting. Later, outside the building, reporters swarmed. Sarah stood at the microphone, exhausted but standing tall. "What will you do now, Captain Chen?" Sarah looked at the survivors, at her crew, at the 2 F-22 pilots who'd watched over her that terrible night. "I'm going to fly," she said simply, "because that's what pilots do, we fly." A reporter called out, "And the name Wraith, does it bother you?" Sarah smiled for the first time in 6 months, a real smile. "It used to, but I've learned something. A Wraith isn't a ghost, it's a guardian. Someone who walks between darkness and light, protecting those who can't protect themselves." She looked directly at the camera. "If that's what being a Wraith means, then I'll wear that name with pride." The survivors erupted in applause. The Wraith had found her wings again. 1 year to the day after Flight 227 fell from the sky, Sarah Chen stood in the Atlantic Airways crew briefing room, holding a flight manifest that made her hands tremble. Flight 227 Memorial, Seattle to Boston via Lake Koocanusa, passengers 183. Every single survivor had requested to fly with her again. Some had driven across the country, others had flown in from overseas. The elderly woman from 22C, the teenage girl from row 38, the mother with her infant daughter, now a toddler, the businessman who'd learned compassion, Marcus and Jessica and the entire crew. All of them choosing to fly with the Wraith one more time. "You don't have to do this," Atlantic Airways CEO Richard Mendoza said quietly. He'd been supportive since the hearing, promoting Sarah to check airman and senior instructor, but even he looked uncertain about this flight. Sarah folded the manifest carefully. "Yes, I do. They need this. I need this." The therapy had helped. 12 months of sessions with Dr. Patricia Reynolds, a psychologist specializing in PTSD. The nightmares still came, but less frequently. Sarah could sleep 4, sometimes 5 hours now without waking up screaming. She developed new training protocols based on her experience, catastrophic systems failure procedures that airlines worldwide were adopting. She'd testified before Congress about aviation safety. She'd become an advocate for pilot mental health. But she hadn't flown a passenger flight since that night. Today, that would change. The aircraft was a Boeing 777, the same model as the one that now rested at the bottom of Lake Koocanusa. Sarah performed her pre-flight walk-around with ritualistic precision, checking every panel, every sensor, every system twice. Marcus appeared at her side, now fully recovered, back to active duty. "Ready, Captain." Sarah looked at him. This young man who'd been unconscious for the worst moments of their lives, who'd trusted her to save them all. "Marcus, I need to tell you something. That night, I was terrified. Every second I thought I was going to fail." "But you didn't." "I almost did. 100 different ways it could have gone wrong, should have gone wrong. Marcus put his hand on her shoulder. Sarah, you know what I remember most? Not the crash, not the fire. I remember waking up as we hit the ice, seeing you at the controls and knowing, absolutely knowing, we were going to be okay, because you were flying. Sarah's eyes burned with tears. Thank you. Boarding was unlike any flight in aviation history. Passengers didn't just board, they hugged the crew, embraced Sarah, cried together, laughed together, shared stories of the year that had passed, of how that terrible night had changed them. The mother from 23A held up her daughter. Emma, we named her Emma, after you told us about your daughter. Say hi to Captain Sarah. Little Emma grabbed Sarah's wings pin, giggling. The teenager from row 38 showed Sarah her pilot's license. I start training with Atlantic Airways next month, because of you. The businessman from 12C introduced his wife. I learned that night that life's too short for selfishness. We got married last month. Row by row, they filled the aircraft, not with fear but with celebration, with gratitude, with love. When everyone was seated, Sarah made her way to the cockpit. Through the window, she saw something that made her heart stop. 2 F-22 Raptors sat on the tarmac, engines running. Her radio crackled. Atlantic 227, this is Viper. Permission to escort you home. Sarah keyed the mic, her voice thick with emotion. Viper Hawk, permission granted and thank you. No Wraith, thank you. Takeoff was smooth. Sarah's hands on the controls felt right for the first time in a year, not shaking, not hesitating, just flying. As they climbed through 10,000 feet, the F-22s appeared on either wing, so close Sarah could see Donovan and Tors in their cockpits. Both gave her a thumbs up. The passengers cheered. Sarah plotted the course herself. They'd deviate from the normal Seattle-Boston route, making a deliberate pass over Lake Koocanusa at exactly 2:47 a.m., the moment Flight 227 had vanished from radar 1 year ago. The hours passed in easy conversation. Sarah left the cockpit multiple times to walk through the cabin, talking with survivors, hearing their stories. The cabin that had been filled with screams now rang with laughter. As they approached Montana, Sarah made an announcement. Ladies and gentlemen, this is your captain. In a few minutes we'll be flying over Lake Koocanusa. I want you to know, that night changed me forever. I see your faces in my dreams, not screaming but alive, fighting, surviving. You taught me what courage really means. It's not the absence of fear, it's continuing despite it. She paused, gathering her words. Tonight we're not running from what happened. We're honoring it. Honoring the fact that 183 souls refused to give up, that we fought together and won together. So look out your windows, remember, and know that you're all heroes too. At exactly 2:47 a.m., the aircraft crossed over Lake Koocanusa. Someone had placed a memorial on the shore, 183 lights, one for each survivor, illuminating the ice where the aircraft had gone down. Local volunteers had maintained it every night for a year. The cabin fell silent. Every passenger pressed against windows, looking down at the frozen lake that should have been their grave. Sarah banked gently, circling once. Tears streamed down her face, but her hands were steady. Goodbye, she whispered to the ghost of that terrible night, and thank you. The F-22s broke formation, executing a missing man formation, a military tribute usually reserved for fallen warriors. They climbed vertically into the night sky, afterburners blazing like twin stars. Then Viper and Hawk rejoined formation, escorting Flight 227 toward Boston. They landed at Logan International Airport as dawn broke over the Atlantic. As passengers deplaned, each one stopped to hug Sarah, to thank her one more time. The last to leave was Jessica. Captain, what you did tonight, bringing us all back here facing the fear, that took more courage than the crash landing. Sarah smiled. We did it together, all of us. Standing at the aircraft door, Sarah watched the survivors disappear into the terminal, returning to their lives. Changed but whole, scarred but stronger. Her phone buzzed, a text from her daughter. "Mommy, I saw you on TV. You're flying again. I'm so proud of you." Sarah looked back at the Boeing 777, just a machine, metal and electronics and fuel, but also something more, a testament to human resilience, to the power of refusing to surrender. Behind her, Marcus secured the cockpit. "Same time next week, Captain." "Same time next week," Sarah confirmed. She descended the stairs, where Donovan and Tors waited in full dress uniforms. "The Wraith flies again," Donovan said with a grin. Sarah shook her head. "No, not the Wraith, just Sarah, a pilot who learned that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is keep going when everything tells you to quit." Tors saluted. "Captain Chen, it's been an honor." Sarah returned the salute, then on impulse hugged them both. As she walked across the tarmac toward the sunrise, Sarah felt something she hadn't felt in a year: peace. She'd saved 183 lives that terrible night, but tonight they'd saved her right back. The ghosts were finally quiet, the nightmares were fading, and Sarah Chen, mother, daughter, survivor, guardian, was ready to fly again. Not running from the past, but carrying it with her. A reminder that even in our darkest moments, even when all systems fail and the world is on fire, we have a choice. We can give up, or we can fly. Sarah chose to fly, and she would never stop. The end.